And we are on. So hello everyone, I'm sitting here with the very awesome Anthony. He is the founder of Wholeheartedly. He has a wealth of knowledge about everything men related and everything life related and everything in between, and I'm super delighted that he took the time to come here and meet me in Oxford, out of all places. Quick little recap, because I know it's been a while for some of you, to why I decided to do these videos. And it was really just all about understanding that so often the people that we feel inspired by, look up to, whatever it is we do in our own little minds, quite often we have to say, dear, that somehow they just got lucky, or maybe they were born on a lucky star, or maybe they have some kind of magic carrot that we just didn't get hold of just yet. In short, quite often the people we idolize, we feel so far removed from, we can't relate to them, and that's very often is what actually stops us from not just achieving our goals, but even attempting to put action into that which is really in our heart. So that's why I'm super excited to be here with the magical Anthony. So Anthony, do you want to share just a little bit about, just tell me like where you're from, and tell me where you were at in your life before you decided to start the Whole Man Academy, and obviously tell me what Whole Man Academy is all about. So that's a lot of three questions.
It's a triple-headed question. Okay, so I was born in the UK, and I grew up down in sunny Kent, which is the Garden of England, and it's best to be down in Kent because it's warmer than up north, and we all know how important sunshine is.
Yes.
And for me, it wasn't until I started working in the city when I was in my early 20s, and quite funnily, I actually wanted to do something to do with radio, film and television, but I ended up working in the city for one of the biggest commodity trading companies in the world. But I didn't really know that when I went for the interview. I was just like so green to, I've got this interview, and probably if I'd have known, I'd have been shitting myself, to be honest. But sometimes it's best not to have all the information and just be like, just go and be yourself instead of worrying too much, because you know how our mind chatter can work. And I worked really in the city, or in London, but then I ended up in the city in the financial markets for nearly 20 years. Which I know I still only look in my 20s, but I got to the stage where in my 30s I started to look around and just be like, is this it? And the job I did was you had to be in at 6:45 in the morning, so you got up at 5:30 every day. You never finished till at least 5, and in different markets it might be 6 or later. So you were just at your desk, with artificial light, in a box, looking at boxes all day.
No fresh air.
Yeah, no fresh air. And I used to crave, because I grew up on a farm, I used to crave the getting outside, and I'd be kind of jealous of people that would be, you might pop out to grab a sandwich, but you'd see people that's sitting in the park at lunchtime and doing that kind of stuff, and I'd be like, I want to do that, but you couldn't, because the thing was, if you weren't at your desk, you weren't making money. We always talk through the Whole Man Academy about phases of a man's life, but of a man's life or woman's life, that in those kind of 20s and early 30s I was too busy with the really important things, which was dating, girls, football, money and gym, and that was pretty much it. That was what was most important to me. But that wasn't particularly a life of impact and fulfillment, and I started to get, in my early 20s, you'd look around and be like, is this it? Is this, like, am I going to stay doing this for the next 20 or 30 years?
And is that going to fulfill me?
Yeah,
right?
and of course, yes, you got paid quite well, and some people I worked with got paid, much more than I did, others less, but I was pretty comfortable with what I was doing. But you start to realise that actually it's not all about the money, and it doesn't matter how much you're being paid, you're still not going to get back those 8 or 10 hours you sat at your desk every day. So I was racking up like 200 hours a month at my desk, plus travel time, and you'd take clients out, so we'd go to Ibiza, we'd go skiing, we'd go to all the football matches you wanted to, which sounds great, and it is, but you got to remember that sometimes you didn't want to go to those things, and after a while, it's like anything, the shine wears off of that, and the excitement when you're like, I'm tired, I've been up working late, I've been out, I might have slept under my desk one night randomly here and there, and this weekend you've got to take clients to Ibiza, and you're like, I just want to go home and like vegetate on the sofa, and it'd be like, tough shit, you are going out and you are gonna put on a good show, party, pay for them all the time, wet nurse them if they're being idiots or something like that, and your job is to make sure they have a good time, and you'll fly back on a Sunday night or a Monday morning and you'll go straight back to work, and you're like, okay, that's not quite as much fun as I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, So fast forward, around that time I decided it was time to do something different, and I
Can
found...
I just ask, were you around your 30s now at this point when you were like starting to go, okay, I need to do something different?
Yeah, I was, what was I? I was about 33, 34, so about 10 years ago now. I'm 44 now.
But look very young still, right?
Something like that. It's all the coconut oil I rub on my face.
Another video for another time
Yes.
about your skincare regime.
We'll do a late one for that. But one of the things I realised, or I found, was personal development. And I'd been, so my partner, who now is my partner, we've got a couple of kids together, but when we first started dating, she'd be like, oh, you ought to listen to podcasts. And I was like, I haven't got time to listen to podcasts. I'm busy being busy. And it turns out that apparently women are right about a lot of things. And I started listening to one or two podcasts, and they were very much about personal development, and one of them was talking about Tony Robbins and Tony Robbins events. And fast forward, listening to lots of them, I was like, do you know what, I've got money in my pocket, I'm not fulfilled in what I'm doing, let's get involved in this. So we went to Unleash the Power Within event in London, which was 5,000 people or something like that at the Excel Centre. And at the end, of course, it's a business, and they had an upsell, which was pay then for the trip to Miami and another trip, which was so Date with Destiny and Life and Wealth Mastery. So I whipped out my debit card and threw that around, and signed up for the rest of the stuff.
Amazing.
Which was great, because I think people have different relationships with money, but at least if you've got money, I didn't have to think about spending $5,000 on a ticket, because it was there. You didn't have to deliberate over it. Anyway, I went to all those events, and Miami was the main one for me, where it was immersive. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people can have online stuff, which is serves a purpose, but we know that being in the room with people, it's like us two, we could have done this on Zoom. It's not the same as being together. Anyway, so I went through that, and towards the end of it, that was around the time I was leaving the city. And I was like, okay, what do I do next? So I decided the best thing to do was start learning about how the body works, the mind works, understanding more about the connections between, our fulfillment and our joy and our love and all those different things. And then finally looked at them like, well, what problem am I solving, and what do I know a lot about? And I've been a professional man for 44 years, morning, noon, and night. So that was my thing, where I started the Whole Man Academy to the answer to things. One is guys don't get together to talk, and the other one was there is a mental health, let's call it, crisis, which has got considerably worse since I first started the Whole Man Academy, because of lockdowns, government policy, withdrawing funding, etc., etc. But when you know that the male suicide rate is 75% of suicides are male, why is that? There's a multitude of reasons, but that was one of the first things I kind of started delving into, was just organising events to get guys together.
Amazing.
That was it 2018 was our first ever event, and I hired Soho House, or the top floor of Soho House, and here was the important thing. It couldn't be some crappy Ibis hotel with a patterned carpet and air conditioning that you're all sitting there cold. It needed to be somewhere that had some
sex appeal.
Yeah, that was cool. That was one of those kind of places where you sit in on a Saturday, maybe with a coffee and what have you, and you're just like, this is nice. So first event did September, I think it was 2018. Wasn't sure if anybody would turn up. Horrible feeling, and unfounded, because I think we had 25 guys in the room.
And I'm just gonna stop you for a moment, because it's like, I love Anthony. Like, I love it. You're like me. You can literally I will just push play, and then you just keep going.
Just go and get a drink.
Exactly. It's like this. I'm just gonna go back. Like, Josie's back later. I'm just gonna stop you, because so you said you did the whole Miami amazing thing. You came back, you'd fully committed, and I think this is a really vital point for anyone listening, which is, so I know you were in a fortunate position in the sense that, okay, you're like, okay, what is the opportunity right here? Right here, I actually got the cash, and this does feel inspiring, so I'm gonna do it. But the point is, there's always an opportunity, right? So right here, your opportunity was that you have the cash, but there's other events in life where it's like, it might not be that you might not have the cash, but actually you're in something else happens. There's always an opportunity if we decide to take it. And then secondly, you came back here, and then you were like, okay, I really gained so much from having an immersive experience myself. That is what I want to start doing, right? I want to create an immersive experience. Now, how did you go from thinking, I'm going to create this event, and yes, and I loved it, because you were like, I know my network, which is another tool, right? Like, know your network, know who your clients are, even your potential clients. So you already knew that a lot of the people that were going to come, number one, hopefully men, right? Number two, you knew that they were kind of in that industry that you had been in for the last 20 years. I guess. So you knew that they're not going to come, like you said, if it's an ibis down the road, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And again, that's about knowing who your clientele is, right? So that's a massive power thing. But how did you go from, I want to do this thing, to then, did you just contact everyone you knew? Like what? Because I think that's where a lot of people get blocked, right? They're like, okay, I feel passionate about this thing. I want to do this event. Now, how practically do I go about it? So what did you do?
You're absolutely right. One of the biggest things is, utilising your network. And there's two things on that. You could call it your network of just emailing people, but also you forget with social media, social media has its good and its bad points. And for some people it's great, other people it's debilitating. But I actually spoke to a guy this morning and he's just launched a new company, and my point is, go and tell everybody what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because they'll either ignore you, then it doesn't matter. They'll either, if they don't like it, it doesn't matter. But they might say, hey, great, I can help you, or I can introduce you to someone. Yeah. And that's where with the Whole Man Academy, I made sure we started, basically posting on Instagram, telling people, boring people left, right and centre with it, and slowly it would start growing. And that was the thing. I think when you're passionate about something and you believe in it, it's not embarrassing to reach out to people, because you're like, hey, I'm doing this cool thing for men's health.
100%.
Do any of you know any men?
Yeah, exactly.
And good job. 50% of the people there, are men. So there's
no men.
a ready audience, and the other rest no men. So I think we've captured that market. But that was the thing, is not being not being scared to tell everybody your new idea, and that applies to anything in life, doesn't it? If you're launching a business, or even if you're I was thinking starting something new, a side adventure, a side hustle, you'd be amazed how many people you tell about it and they'll go, hey, I know this person you should speak to. You're like, oh, cool.
100%. I'm all about that. I always say, if you want to be a good teacher, you have to start teaching, and you have to just start teaching fucking anyone.
Yeah.
Literally drag them in by their hair if you need, even, obviously don't pay them to be there, but you have to do whatever it is that you have a dream about. You have to take action, and it can't just be the huge picture down, in 10 years time I can run this big retreat and it's going to be amazing, or, start small and let it build momentum, or start with what you have. So you had the contacts, and that you knew could afford a ticket for whatever price, so that you could get your the expenses you had sorted out for that Soho house covered, and you might make a little bit on top, or you might not, but at least that was worth it to you, because that was your kick-off moment, right?
That's it. And you've just said it kicked it off, and what it does is it kicked off a level of energy that gave you something to talk about with the photos, and even without
momentum.
That's it. And that is once the momentum starts, I realised that you told a few people and they were like, hey, we had different companies that say, hey, we can support you. So, Geese and Hawks, who's a Savile suit tailor, they sponsored us for a year. London Sock Company, who one of the biggest growing brands, I met the guys through contacts, and they were like, we'll sponsor you for a year, we'll give you free socks for all your events, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly, of course, then they share it on their platforms, and people go, oh, because if you align yourself with good other brands that are similar to you, but especially have got a bigger following, basically it kind of rubber stamps that people will take you a bit more seriously than you just doing something all on your own.
100%.
But the big thing for me was, how do you go from one event to then 12 events before lockdown?
And that was going to be my next question, but you see how I'm actually not needed here. I might just go have a break.
You just take your time. But that is it, isn't it? It's because you start something, and the big thing is you haven't always got to know every step. It hasn't always got to be what's the next step. It can be do you know what? Let's do this thing and let's see what comes up from it. And after 2 or 3 events, we realised there was a real need for it, a desire for it, and you'd have guys afterwards saying, when's the next one? We'd run 12 events, the biggest one being at Geese and Hawks at number 1 Savile Row, and we had 65 guys in the room, and it was an evening event, and we had David Gandy, who's the international style icon, who came and spoke.
Very good looking man.
Yes, a tall chap as well, and he, I think what happened with that, I was really excited when he said he'd come and talk at the event, because again it gave, I would guess he's been on more front covers than any other man in the world, which is just again adds a little bit of something exciting to the event.
Of course it does.
I'll tell you what was cool about it though, you didn't just have solitary guy turning up on his own. With that event you had a guy being like, oh, I'm buying 4 tickets, me and my mates are coming along.
Oh, amazing.
So it wasn't that oh, I'm going to an event, it was, I'm going to an event, and I want it to be aspirational, a feeling of, I want to go to events because you're going to meet cool people, have a good laugh, learn something new, be inspired, make new connections.
And did you approach him directly personally, or did you have someone else approach him, or how did you go about
You're
that?
right. Well, it turned out through the London, again, all about connections, the London Sock Company, David is a shareholder in the company, and because they said, really like your idea, and then through someone else had kind of, cross-triangulated, how to speak to him. And I remember we'd invited him to a party that we had, and he replied back and said, I can't come. And I was like, you feel that?
Yeah.
And then I think it was that he replied back with something a bit like, how else can I help you?
Yeah.
And you're like,
oh, well, actually.
Okay. Well, you could come and speak at an event. And when I remember getting the email, I still remember it now, where I woke up, and I know you should check your phone as soon as you wake up in the morning, but I couldn't help it. I woke up and I refreshed my email, and it said, Gandhi's in. And I remember being like, yes! Because I knew that would put it on the map a little bit more, and it just would raise the awareness of what we were doing.
Massive pivotal moment.
Oh, it was huge. So anyway, that was all going very well, just like a lot of things. We'd gone up to 12 events. We had them at South Place Hotel. We'd had, guys from all different sectors as well, talking and coming along. So guys from Formula One. We've had guys from the world of media. We'd had one of the best ones for me actually was a guy called Simon Mundy who's interviewed lots of other famous people on his podcast. So we had a really great event where he spoke about who he'd interviewed, and it was all going well. And then lockdowns happened, and it's quite a technical term, but it fucked it up. So it was like, no events, and we pivoted onto doing online events, but again, it's just not quite the same, which is why we then started the podcast, which I'd intended to anyway, but there's again positives and negatives of lockdowns and things like that. You've had all your freedom taken away, but the good thing was it forced me into starting the podcast. So I chucked another 2,500 at a podcast course, which was an intensive one because I want to take action now. I don't want to be like, let's take a couple of months. It's like,
let's do it
get
now.
it done.
Yeah.
And we started the podcast, and now we're up to 100, and this Friday we release our 116th episode, I think.
Oh, amazing. That is so good. That's amazing. So good.
I know a lot of people like to. I think the interesting thing about podcasts is people can consume them doing anything. So you haven't got to sit and watch it. Now we record it on audio and video. So we have a YouTube channel, and we have people watching on there. But most of our listens, views, or what have you, are all done via Spotify or iTunes. And it will be people like I do. If I was out doing gardening or doing something, or sitting on the train and I'm listening to it. Apart from the David Gandhi interview we did, which I think has had about 30,000 views now or something like that, which for us is huge.
Oh, I think for anyone is really, really huge,
yeah,
Anthony. Can I just ask you, so how many events, so what's the format, what's Whole Man Academy about right here, right now, sort of practically speaking? So whoever is listening or watching, whatever you're doing out there, later on, if you have a man, or you know a man, and you might even know several, that might be in need of a little bit of Whole Man Academy help and tips and guidelines, what could a man come to you for? Not just for, but as in, do you have events? How often do you run events? I know you do private coaching as well. What's on offer? What's the menu?
Yeah, and it's good because it was ever changing from, we started with basically nothing but an event. Problem is, events are they're immersive, but you go home and then you're like, what do I do now? Yeah,
because the transition feels so different and so drastic. I get that because I run about 5 retreats each year. I also do events, but retreats is a big thing, and that's exactly the feeling a lot of people are getting, because they're there with me and the group, 5 intensive days somewhere beautiful. There's hugs, there's healing, there's yoga, there's good food. We're with people that are interested in the same thing as you, and you fly home on a high, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, fuck, it's Monday. The sky's really grey, and you're like, how can I tune into that good feeling, and how can I keep that good feeling going?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And that's exactly what I learned from the Tony Robbins events, where they'd say it is very hard because you're on a real high and you're out of your normal, and then suddenly Monday morning and you're like, right, what shall I do? I'll get a coffee first, and then I'll start. So we looked at it as, how can we have, let's call it like a funnel of progress. So it would be your, let's say, free content would be, you could sign up to our e-letter, which goes out to hundreds of men across the world on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then you'd have the podcast, which again is free, so people can listen to 115 hours of me talking to inspiring men from around the world.
They can get so much Anthony in every single day. Yes.
And I think that's the important thing. So here's the thing, I'll backtrack slightly. It wrongly gets pigeonholed, or it started to, as, it's always talk about mental health. Now, here's a fact. Most men don't want to come to events that are labelled as mental health. And we're not here to talk about mental health. Mental health is one part of what makes up a man. His health, fitness, mindset, mental health, his relationships, his family, spirituality, all the different things, finances. So we always say that if you took me when I worked in the city, and if I was like ding, 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 hey guys, to 300 brokers on the floor who are all aged between 18 and 50, who wants to come to a mental health event for men this weekend? They'd be like, fuck off, or someone hit with a shoe, or a Daily Mail, or some other high quality rag full of rubbish and lies. And whereas if you reframed it, and it might be the same thing, but you said he wants to come to a mental strength event for men, we're going to have Maori warriors, crypto experts, entrepreneurs, and a couple of former footballers. Oh yeah, I'm interested in that.
Totally.
So that's how, for me, it was, I guess that comes to branding.
Changing the language.
Change the language completely.
Exactly, same message, change the language.
So now you can have the free options of that. Then the next option would be, we know with most men, especially with the diet they eat, what they consume, the workload they have, and the kind of constraints put on them by the world at the moment, the energy is one of the big parts of it. And again, if you're trying to achieve something in life, no matter what it is, and better yourself, if you haven't got enough energy, often it's not going to happen, or it won't happen as fast. So we designed a 6-week energy protocol course which looked at fitness, mindset, nutrition, morning routine, and biohacks, and one of the biggest ones, sleep, because you can, I always say, you might not be able to get more sleep, but can you improve the quality of the sleep you get?
Yes.
Especially there's a lot of young dads who, as I know myself, are having sleepless nights and saying to your partner, yeah, I'm going to go to bed early, you stay up and sort stuff out. Isn't going to happen. So you've got the free resources, then you've got the online course. The next one up to that would be either private mentoring with me, and that for me, I know that's where the fun happens, because it's very interactive, and you're kind of unpacking a lot of the shit that's going on with a guy and asking, where do you want to be? So it's not always it's not therapy, it's not going back and picking scabs over the past, because I don't
looking
think
at the future.
It's saying, right, where are we now?
Yeah.
Yes, some stuff will contribute to that, but what do you want in the future?
100%.
And then go after it like your life depends on it, which it does.
Which it literally does.
Yeah. And then the top of the tree, as it were, is when people, again, that depends on their budget, but the mentoring will be over a period of weeks, months, or years. And there's a guy I've been working with now for, 3 years, we think it is, roughly like that. And I put it on our website at some point, because one of the emails he said to me recently was, I'm the happiest I've ever been.
Yes.
And I take that guy from quite a few years ago, and he was depressed, on antidepressants, slightly overweight, drinking, didn't have the right partner. It was all not, he didn't have a great energy about it. Since then, we changed, he'd see me about once a month, once every 2 months, something like that. We tweaked different things. He stopped drinking, not that I'm saying he shouldn't drink, but for him that wasn't serving him. And he kind of sharpened himself up in the way he looks, the way he thought. He met a new partner. He's now married, lives with her. They've got a new baby. He's really earns well at his company, and he's now a leader at his company instead of a follower.
And I'm just going to stop you there for a moment, because it's also juicy and amazing, but let's just hold it. So just the fact he was seeing me once a month or twice a month or every 2 months, etc. And I think this is a really, really valid point. A lot of the time when people, whether you start not a starting business, but when you're looking to get help or any kind of support, so help doesn't have to be you're now like homeless on the street and oh my god, please help me. Literally just going, that feeling that you had when you were in your early 30s before you started to shift career, not just shift career, but change your life essentially.
Yeah.
And you were like, from the outside it's all good, but on the inside it doesn't feel so brilliant, right? Like something is missing, and when you have that feeling, understanding that sometimes all it needs is just for one person that you trust and feel supported by and feel inspired by, reaching out to that one person and just going, okay, I can afford to see you once a month or even every 2 months, but like everything is accumulative, and when you just start that process, that can literally change your life. Like you don't need to have, your 10,000, you don't need to like spend 250 every single time, like seeing someone 5 days a week, right? It can literally just be that you go, okay, here's my budget, and this is what I can do, and this is what I will do. But just taking that first step really changes everything, right?
It's the first step, and also it's, I think a lot of guys, and even for me, before I understood how, let's say, personal development worked and coaching, mentoring, etc., you kind of be like, do you know what, I can do it all myself. And even if I had the money, I saw a lot of guys had the money, but they were like, I'm not spending it, because it wasn't normalised to spend money on getting someone to help you, inspire you, motivate you, educate you.
Because it made you feel a little bit like, oh fuck, have I then failed?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's this thing of like, I should just be able to do it by myself, right?
Well, I remember sitting at one of the desks I was at when I worked in the city, and I'd started going to the coaching academy and learning about coaching and personal development. And I heard some guys behind me talking about one of their ex-colleagues, and they said, "Oh, look at him!" And they were looking at his website, and he was a life coach.
Yeah.
And they said something like, "Look at this guy! What a load of rubbish! What a load of bollocks! What have you?" And I was sitting there like with my diploma thing under, that I was reading, and I was like, "Yeah, rubbish," thinking, but that was so close-minded. And that's, for me, I wanted to work with people that. When I say open-minded, they understand the big question of what's possible. So it's not just but this hasn't worked and I haven't got this.
Oh my god!
It's like, okay, well, if you didn't have the worries of money or constraints of time or work, what would be possible? Oh, well, I could do this. I'd start this. I'd do that. And you're right. Okay, well, with that, how could we take steps towards it?
Well, 100%. I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. So. That moment again, so you're in your early 30s, you're still working in the city, and you're starting to be more and more going like, oh, it's not quite right. There's something else out there, right?
Yeah.
And I know you came across. How did you come across Tony Robbins? Did someone put his name your way? Because I read his book when I was 18 because someone literally was like, hey, you should read this book, and I read it. But okay, so the podcast. So essentially, Emma, your wife?
Yes.
Emma was like, hey, podcast.
That's it. And I was like, and then she was right, as I say. But that was the important thing, and also on. Going back to the rebranding, like I was asked just during lockdown to contribute to like a corporate white paper on mental health, you could say. And as these companies do, they often they write the stuff for you, or they take some of what you said and then they make it look nice. And I was like, no, I don't like that, because I don't ever want words to be put in my mouth. I'm quite capable of saying what I want to say. And what they'd said was, the Wholeheartedly Academy provides a safe space. And I was like, no, I'm not having that. I said a safe space, and I've said this sometimes, feels like a padded cell. Or is it...
a nappy.
Exactly, which is completely shit. I mean, literally. And for me, it was very much about, I was like, that isn't what the events are about, and therefore, I understand people still going to use it, and that's fine, but you won't ever hear me... using that terminology. And also because, as someone pointed out, I did a survey from the guys on our e-letter, and I had 22 responses, and 20 of the 22 guys were like, I would never use that term. Well, it would actually put me off. But one of the guys pointed out, he's like, you're saying that this is a safe space and therefore everything else isn't safe. Now you're like,
it's the only good place to be.
That's it. That's not a good frame of mind to be in, especially in the last 2 years of our people have been psychologically manipulated by the government's own messaging. You don't need any more on top of the fear-based stuff that comes out of the newspapers, the media, TV.
So true.
So I was like, let's not get into the old safe space thing.
Absolutely not. But again, I'm going to take you back in time. So there, Emma has kind of been like, hey, nudge, not podcast time, and you're listening to Tony Robbins. There's something there, and you're like, okay, well, for some reason, there's something that feels attractive about that. So I'm going to go down that route. Now, then you went to Miami. Well, you did the first thing, Unleash Power, and then you decided, okay, I'm just going to sign up for the whole thing. I'm fully in. I'm jumping in. I'm like, this is it. Wherever that's going to take me. Now, tell me again, not because I understand, in life we're driven by two things, right? Either fear or love or excitement, right? And so at that moment, you went to the first gig with Tony. Well, first of all, you listened to the podcast because you were like, okay, well, there's no risk. I'm not investing in anything. I can even be doing my jogging at the same time, so there's even less risk, right? Then you go like, this feels kind of exciting, but it's still not exciting enough that I'm going to sign up for the whole fucking thing. But slightly more risk. I'm going to pay a little bit of money, go to this one-off event in London, right? Then you go there, and then what? And again, not about Anthony Robbins, but something sparks within you, right?
When you get around the people that are doing great things, and also are making lots of money as well, I think that's, people again have this funny thing about money, but I got taught very early on that if you have loads of money, you can help more people, and it brings you more opportunities.
We've had this chat before. We're both on the same page. Money is not a bad thing.
That's it. And we see the problem often with money. It's not about that. It's not. I mean, to say obvious, money isn't it's just a thing. It's
a
just
tool,
it's what
it's
you
an
do
energy.
with it.
Yeah, that's it.
And I heard a great saying which said, having a lot of money just amplifies what you're like. So if you're a really nice, kind, generous person, when you've got loads of money, you help people out. If you're a total dick, then you'll probably just be a twat with more money and be flash with what you're doing. So yeah, for me, I remember meeting a guy who was you would never have known he had loads of money, but on one of the mornings we were people were doing some yoga on the beach, meditation, and I was doing some exercise classes with some people, like just to get people energized. And when we were cooling down, we got into we're wading in the sea. And the night before, we'd been talking about what is like one of the big challenges for you at the moment. And for me, I can't remember what my challenge was, but I was like, thinking of leaving my job or this, that. I was like, what about you? What's your challenge? And he was really kind of holding back. And I was like, just tell me, it doesn't matter what you say. I always say, you can tell me anything you want. And he said, it sounds a bit shit. He said, but I'm trying to decide whether to upgrade my private jet to a G6. And I was like, oh right, I was like, is he joking or what? Because I didn't realise, I just thought he was, when I say normal, I think he had a normal budget. And it turned out he owned a company, and he was like, no, this one cost X amount, but the new one's just over 10 million, and I'm not sure. And I was like, what I loved about him was that he wasn't telling people. It really took me to kind of squeeze that out of him, and I was like, isn't that impressive? So it does remind you that, again, with money, for all of us, I like surrounding myself with people that have made money in various forms, because it shows they've got drive, they have good ideas, and they've probably got a really good network.
Yeah, 100%. So again, you're in the event, and so you're seeing all of that, I'm assuming, you're feeling all of that, and what is it that takes you from that to then signing up for the whole thing in Miami? Is it that you can see yourself, you're relating yourself, you're going, okay, actually, what he's doing, which I think is a really fair point, when we feel inspired by someone, they have to be somewhat relatable. That normally gives us the biggest drive to be like, you know what, I can do a bit of that too.
Yeah.
Was there a part of you that went, you know what, I think what he's doing is making me feel a certain way, I would like to be able to do, doesn't have to be what he's doing, but enable other people to feel a similar way to what I'm feeling right now. Was there a thing, was it essentially where you moved from a space of excitement, love, whatever it is, as opposed to a state of fear, which is usually fuck, where I came from, the thought of sitting back in the city, the 16 hours a day, no fresh air, no da-da-da-da.
I think you nailed it when you said it comes from love, because I looked at the people who were working in that space and the results they were getting, and I was like, I want to do this.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know how, but I will do.
Yes.
And it's really funny because years later, when I stood up in front of 65 guys at an event, or I spoke in front of 200 at another event, and you've got all these people from radio, film, television, and banking, and all these different sectors, and you're like, how have I got here?
Yeah, totally.
I used to be the one in the crowd, being not I want to be up there for. But because they're there because you're creating some positive impact and making a difference, and that's for me was about how can I do that. So those events showed me what's possible.
100%.
And again, the more you're around those kind of people, I love that, because they will be like everybody else. Be they encourage you. Try this, take risks.
That's it.
And fuck what other people think.
And it's not just a mental experiment. We're not just sitting here theorizing about it. You physically felt it. Like you always talk about, having the physical events, because energetically you're feeling it, physically you're feeling it, emotionally, mentally you're being stimulated. It's not just something you have to sit and analyze. It's actually happening as you're experiencing it.
And you can't. It's very hard to replicate that feeling. And again, I wanted to bring that into the events that we had, which is why I said they're aspirational events. But again, the issue was with the lockdowns. That's what stopped that. But that's why I wanted the podcast to not become some happy clappy personal development podcast, but one that guys would sit down and be like, I'm really looking forward to listening to Anthony talk to this person, that person. And I think, for so many people, we say time is your most valuable resource, as it were, and asking people to put a lot of their time into listening to you. You want to make sure you're interviewing good people, and providing some thought-provoking content. So for me, it's not always about having the most famous person on, because the danger is you bring someone on and people are like, I've heard 3 or 4 interviews, and generally people will say the same thing over and over and over again because they've got a good message. But once you've heard it 4 times, I'm like, why do I need to listen to more? So I try and bring on guys that, and it's a saying, guys you should have heard of but probably never have. So it's
love that.
not to say that you don't have some famous people on there. But I mean, last week I spoke to a guy in martial arts who's super smart and wise. He's only 30. And I was like, how the fuck are you that smart at 30 compared to where I was? But I had messages from guys being like, oh, he said about this, testosterone levels, blah, blah, blah. And that's what we're after, is bringing in some different guys that help guys kind of just think about what they're doing, basically.
Absolutely. And so, obviously you've already shared lots of amazing things about Whole Man Academy, but just summing up, what is the message of Whole Man Academy? What's the intention? What's the manifesto?
We want to help a guy, and we use it as our tagline, live his own version of an epic life.
Yes.
Because, you know, my version of epic life now is spending lots of time with my family, you know, earning money, doing something I love, making a good impact. Whereas when I worked in the city, I didn't have a family, so that wasn't important to me, and it was more about, you know, money and those kind of things. And some guys have completely different ways of living their own version of epic life. You know, a CEO is going to have a different version of it, maybe to a guy that lives on a barge that, you know, works as a welder or something like that. So it's kind of going after whatever it is for you, uncovering it, and the big one for us is about their silent struggle. So you look at most guys have got, and when I say silent struggle, it doesn't mean that there's some deeply rooted issue, but some guys it might be relationships, some guys it might be finances, it could be health, it could be business, all these different things. And often when you talk to a guy, once they're honest, they'll be like, yeah, everything else is going well apart from this. And I asked a question months ago on our e-letter, which was, if you were sitting down with someone like for coaching mentoring, what's the one thing you wouldn't want to talk about? Because it fucking gets you. And a few of the guys were like, fuck, well, actually it's this, and I haven't done this, and I was like, okay, that's the thing you want to address, because you can faff about with all the other stuff, but if you can kind of, you know, hit that nail on the head of like, what is the big thing that's kind of stopping you from moving forward?
And invite it in. Invite it in, share it. I'm with you.
One of the guys, it really changed his energy, because when you're like holding something in and that's his silent struggle, you're not telling anyone and you're just compartmentalizing it. If you can release it out, it's like,
But that's that thing we say, right? Like shame and guilt, and it needs places to hide. The silent struggle, right? So the more we share about it with people that we trust or we somehow feel comfortable with, the less a big thing, less of a hold and a grip and a dark shadow it is within us, right? You know, and then also the more we realize that actually everyone else got stuff going on too, and you know, like we're all kind of just like fumbling our way around. You know,
anybody that says they haven't is lying.
But that's exactly it. You know, like we're all just doing the best we can with the tools that we have. Going back to you, so. How has creating, continuing to create Whole Man Academy, how has that changed your life personally? So you mentioned your relationship.
Yes, so I always say that I wouldn't be with Emma if I hadn't gone to the Tony Robbins events, and I say that because they had a whole day on relationships, which, let's face it,
it's so funny. I'm going to stop you now, because my partner, ex-partner, who knows what's going on, he literally just as of yesterday was like, I'm going to go to this Tony Robbins event, and I have never heard him talk about that, and I was like, amazing, you go, and he's like, yeah, but they've got a whole damn relationship, I totally want to do it. And he's like, I totally don't want to do that. So I'm just sitting here like, Anyway, going back to you did the day on relationships.
But doesn't that sum up a lot of men are like? Even for me, I was like,
yikes. And he was like, and it's American.
Yes, and it's all that, you know, I'll go back to the high-fiving when I turn up first event, everybody's high-fiving, I was like, fuck's sake, like, don't start that with me. But here's the thing, most people don't give more than maybe a few thoughts to their relationship, let alone spend a whole day working on it. And for me, I realised, long story short, it showed the levels of the way you were working in a relationship. I wasn't showing up as the man I wanted to be, and it wasn't until I reflect on that, I was like, do you know what? I don't know if I want to stay with Emma or not, because it's a big decision to stay with someone the rest of your life. But I realised that the things she was putting in, like a lot of effort, and I wasn't putting enough. And they said there, for the next 3 months, go home and put in the amount of effort you think you should have and you expect in return. And if after 3 months it's not working, you've tried. And literally after about 2 weeks of putting in effort, I was like, what the fuck have I been doing? Like, she's great, and I need to up my game. And I'll say that's where when people say, oh, it cost you, you know, I think in total it must have cost about 15 grand for the flights, for the hotels, for the events. One guy at another event I was at was like, oh, that's a lot of money, is it? What'd you get for that? And I showed him the picture of my 2 little kids, and he was like, all right, fair enough.
Amazing.
So, for me, that's one of the big things that changed with the Whole Man Academy. One of the biggest things has been, forgetting all the feel-good stuff, my network massively expanded from guys all across the world. I've got personal trainers in New York, I've got Maori Warriors in New Zealand, I've got crypto, one of the guys, big crypto expert, who shared my interview on his channel. And entrepreneurs, all these different guys that I wasn't connected to before, ex-footballers, etc., that now, most of them, you could message them and be like, I need a favour, I need an introduction, or I need a suggestion, and they'll be like, great.
And also recognizing that you are part of a whole big worldwide community. You're part of nearly 9 billion people, right? You know, which is the biggest thing as a human being. We always have this fear of separation. That's the fear of the ego, right? It's always like, especially when we're starting something new or we're going into anything that's new and that might be a challenge or just unknown, we always have this idea of like, oh, but I'll be all alone. And actually recognizing that you're really not all alone is such a massive thing, right?
That's at least now with, again, I was no fan of lockdowns because it ruined a lot of people's mental health, and I'm never shy to say that. But one of the things now is when you've got these online abilities, they're not perfect, but at least people can connect more and have group stuff. So it's not the answer, but it's a tool to help people, which is why we connected at the event about loneliness and connectivity.
100%, exactly.
So I say the Whole Man Academy gives guys tools to do life better. What those tools are depends on a guy's budget, attention span, and desire to move forward.
Where he's at in his life, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
And that's where we are.
I think that's amazing, Anthony. Thank you so much. It's been epic.
Good effort.
It's been amazing. Can you just share the details? Is it of your website?
Yeah, so our website is wholemanacademy.com. We're also on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I won't say Facebook because I hate Facebook.
Perfect. Have an amazing day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you, darling.
Do you want to switch it off so I don't get... Yeah.